read another book. And it is a Stephen King. And it is, I think, going to be a good one. We are going to start reading The Body. This is a section called Fall from Innocence, and it's for George MacLeod. And if anybody's ever seen Stand By Me, that is what it is based on. What the Stand By Me is based on is The Body. So this is going to be very interesting. I've never read this. I've been trying to find things that I've never read, things that are, awesome. Stephen King's awesome anyway. It doesn't even matter. Hi. But yeah, we're going to read that. I'm going to give everybody a few minutes to kick in here. Really? Really? Is that your attitude right now, huh? You know what? Why don't you go ahead and feed them dinner, honey? It's a really good movie. It was made back in the 80s. Her bowl's in the crate. Phoebe, come here. Phoebe, come here. Come here. Phoebe, come here. Yes, Mama, I'm itching your back. Are you happy I'm itching your back? Phoebe, come here. Phoebe. I'm trying to get in there with a hurt in the face. Phoebe, come here. She's excited. She's hungry. She says, feed me. I read a couple little shorts. She's really giving him a mouthful. Phoebe, is you getting dinner? She's like all excited. She's watching. She's like, oh, I get food. Right in her crate, she'll go. I read a couple little shorts from Stephen King in Night Shift. I read Jerusalem's Lot, and I read The Graveyard Shift. And they are really good. And these books here, there's one missing. Where did I put it? I was reading on it. Where did I put it? Oh, duh, it's in my hand. But there's 14 Tales, Nightmares and Dreamscapes, Skeleton Crew, Night Shift, and this one I'm currently holding. These all have different smaller novellas. They're not bigger novels, but they are individuals, and this one has 4 of them. This has Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption, Apt Pupil, The Body, and The Breathing Method. And I thought The Body would be a good one. So we're gonna read that. The most important things are the hardest things to say. They're the things you get ashamed of, because words diminish them. Again, I keep forgetting. I am Lady Rain, and I am going to read The Body by Stephen King. It is part of different seasons. So that's what we're going to read. Words shrink things that seemed limitless when they were in your head to no more than living sighs when they're brought out. And yes, I mess up quite a bit, so you will hear me doing that. But it's more than that, isn't it? The most important things lie too close to wherever your secret heart is buried. Like landmarks to a treasure your enemies would love to steal away. And you may make revelations that cost you dearly only to have people look at you in a funny way, not understanding what you'd said at all. Or why you thought it was so important when you almost cried while you were saying it. That's the worst, I think. When a secret lies locked within, not for want of a teller, but for want of an understanding ear. I was 12 going on 13 when I first saw a dead human being. It happened in 1960, a long time ago. Although sometimes it doesn't seem that long to me, especially on the nights I wake up from dreams where the hail falls into his open eyes. We had a tree house and a big elm, which overhung a vacant lot in Castle Rock. And it's funny because Castle Rock is part of a couple more stories. And I've noticed that a lot of the stories interact with each other. So, yeah. Oh, I read Night Surf too. And Night Surf actually interacted a little bit with what was going on in the stand. So that was kind of interesting. There's a moving company on that lot today, and the elm is gone. Progress. It was a sort of social club, although it had no name. There were 5, maybe 6 steady guys, and some other wet ends who just hung around. We'd let them come up when there was a card game, and we needed some fresh blood. The game was usually blackjack.
Mom, can I refill baby's bowl just in case?
Fine. And we played for pennies. Nickel limit. But you got double money on blackjack and 5 card under. Triple money on 6 card under. Although Teddy was the only guy crazy enough to go for that. The sides of the treehouse were planks scavenged from the shit pile behind Mackey Lumber and Building Supply on Carbine Road. They were splintery and full of knot holes we pulled with either toilet paper or paper towels. The roof was a corrugated tin sheet we hawked from the dump. Looking over our shoulders all the time, we were hustling it out of there because the dump custodian's dog was supposed to be a real kid-eating monster. We found a screen door out there on the same day. It was fly-proof, but really rusty. I mean, the rust was extreme. No matter what time of day you looked out that screen door, it looked like sunset. Besides playing cards, the club was a good place to go and smoke cigarettes and look at girly books. There were 6 battered tin ashtrays that said camels on the bottom. A lot of centerfolds tacked to the splintery walls. 20 or 30 dog-eared packs of bite cards. Teddy got them from his uncle, who ran the Castle Rock stationery shop. When Teddy's unc asked him one day what kind of cards we played, Teddy said we had cribbage tournaments, and Teddy's unc thought that he thought that just fine. That was just fine. A set of plastic poker chips and a pile of ancient Master Detective murder magazines to leaf through if there was nothing else shaking. We had built a 12-foot by 10-foot secret compartment under the floor to hide most of the stuff, and on the rare occasion when some kid's father decided it was time to go, and we're really good pals routine. Or time to do the we're really good pals routine. When it rained, being in the club was like being inside a Jamaican steel drum. But that summer, there had been no rain. It had been the driest and hottest since 1907, or so the newspaper said. And on that Friday preceding Labor Day weekend, and the start of another school year, even the goldenrod in the fields and the ditches beside the back roads looked parched and poorly. Nobody's garden had done doodly squat that year, and the big displays of canning stuff in the Castle Rock red and white were still there, gathering dust. No one had anything to put up that summer, except maybe dandelion wine. Teddy and Chris and I were up in the club on that Friday morning, glooming to each other about school being so near and playing cards and swapping the same old traveling salesman jokes and Frenchman jokes. How do you know when a Frenchman's been in your backyard? Well, your garbage cans are empty and your dog is pregnant. Teddy would try to look offended, but he was the first one to bring in a joke as soon as he heard it, only switching Frenchman to Pollock. The elm gave good shade, but we already had our shirts off, so we wouldn't sweat them up too bad. We were playing 3-penny scat, the dullest card game ever invented, but it was too hot to think about anything more complicated. We'd had a pretty fair scratch ball team until the middle of August.
That's funny. Look outside.
What?
Because, the card
Yeah, they're getting ready to leave. We'd had a pretty fair scratch ball team until the middle of August, and then a lot of kids... Just leave it.
No, the car.
I'm not worried about it. It's somebody's car, leave it be. Till the middle of August, and then a lot of kids just drifted away. Too hot. I was down to my ride and building spades. I'd started with 13, gotten an 8 to make 21, and nothing had happened since then. Chris knocked. I took my last draw and got nothing helpful. Helpful
there's two of them.
in the sink. Nothing helpful.
Both of them?
Yes. 29, Chris said, laying down diamonds. 22. "22, Teddy said, looking disgusted. Piss up a rope, I said, and tossed my cards onto the table face down. What? Don't see that.
You can go to them.
Oh, wait. Huh, I don't know. Anyway. Now, 22, Teddy said, looking disgusted. Piss up a rope, I said, and tossed my cards onto the table face down. Gordy's out. Old Gordy just bit the bag and stepped out the door. Teddy bugled, and then gave out with his patented Oh, now I see. Awesome. His patented Teddy Duchamp laugh. E, like a rusty nail being slowly hauled out of a rotten board. Well, he was weird. We all knew it. He was close to being 13, like the rest of us. But the thick glasses and the hearing aid he wore sometimes made him look like an old man. Kids were always trying to catch smokes off him on the street, but the bulge in his shirt was just his hearing aid battery. In spite of the glasses and the flash-colored button always screwed into his ear, Teddy couldn't see very well and often misunderstood the things people said to him. In baseball, you had to have him play the fences, way beyond Chris in left field and Betty Greer in right. He just hoped no one would hit one that far. You just hoped no one would hit that far because Teddy would go grimly after it, see it or not. Every now and then, he got bonked a good one, and once he went out cold. When he ran full tilt boogie into the fence by the treehouse. He lay there on his back with his eyes showing whites for almost 5 minutes, and I got scared. Then he woke up and walked around with a bloody nose and a huge purple lump raising out on his forehead, trying to claim that the ball was foul. Was that the cat? Oy. Cat thinks he's dying. 'Cause Mama's not there. His eyesight was just naturally bad, but there was nothing natural about what happened to his ears. Back in the days when it was cool to get your hair cut so your ears stuck out like a couple of jug handles, Teddy had Castle Rock's first Beatle haircut. 4 years before anyone in America had ever heard of the Beatles. He kept his ears covered because he looked like 2 lumps of warm wax. One day when he was 8, Teddy's father got pissed at him for breaking a plate. His mother was working at the shoe factory in South Paris when it happened. By the time she found out about it, it was all over. Teddy's dad took Teddy over to the big wood stove at the back of the kitchen and shoved the side of Teddy's head down against one of the cast iron burner plates. He held it down there for about 10 seconds and then yanked Teddy up by the hair on his head and did the other side. Then he called the Central Maine General Emergency Unit and told them to come get his boy. Then he hung up the phone, went into the closet, got his 410, and sat down to watch the daytime stories on TV with the shotgun laid across his knees. When Mrs. Burrows from next door came over to ask if Teddy was all right, she'd heard the screaming. Teddy's dad pointed the shotgun at her. Mrs. Burrows went out of the DeChamp house at roughly the speed of light, locked herself in her own house, and called the police. When the ambulance came, Mr. DeChamp let the orderlies in, then went out on the back porch to stand guard while they wheeled Teddy to the old port-holed Buick ambulance on a stretcher. Teddy's dad explained to the orderlies that while the fucking brass hats said the area was clear, there were still Kraut snipers everywhere. One of the orderlies asked Teddy's dad if he had thought he could hold on. Teddy's dad smiled tightly and told the orderly he'd hold until hell was a Frigidaire dealership, if that's what it took. The orderly saluted, and Teddy's dad snapped it right back at him. A few minutes after the ambulance left, the state police arrived and relieved Norman DeChamp of duty. He'd been doing odd things like shooting cats and lighting fires in mailboxes for over a year, and after the atrocity he had visited upon his son, they had a quick hearing and sent him to Togus, which is a VA hospital. Togus is where you have to go if you're a Section 8. Teddy's dad had stormed the beach at Normandy, and that's just the way Teddy always put it. Teddy was proud of his old man in spite of what his old man had done to him, and Teddy went with his mom to visit him every week. He was the dumbest guy we hung around with, I guess, and he was crazy. He'd take the craziest chances you can imagine and get away with them. His big thing was what he called truck dodging. He'd run out in front of them on 196, and sometimes they'd miss him by bare inches. God knew how many heart attacks he caused, and he'd be laughing while the wind blast from the passing truck rippled his clothes. It scared us because his vision was so lousy. Coke bottle glasses or not. Let her out. It seemed like only a matter of time before he misjudged one of those trucks. And you had to be careful when you dared him because Teddy would do anything on a dare. Gordy's out! Screw, I said, and picked up a Master Detective to read while they played it out. I turned to, he stomped the pretty co-ed to death in a stalled elevator and got right into it. Teddy picked up his cards, gave them one brief look, and said, "I knock." "You four-eyed pile of shit," Chris cried. "The pile of shit has 1,000 eyes." What? What? Thank you for licking my face. Do you need to go outside? Give me 1 second, guys. Do you need to go outside? All right, let's go. Let's go. Let's go. No, go. Go shut the door. Go. Go. Get out there. Go. I don't know why she wanted me. I mean,
she's afraid of me.
Yeah, well, open the fridge and put this in.
Just open the fridge.
I said open the fridge, then put it in.
Oh. Sorry.
Yeah. All right. Teddy picked up his cards, gave them one brief look, and said, "I knock." "You four-eyed pile of shit," Chris cried. "The pile of shit has 1,000 eyes," Teddy said gravely, and both Chris and I cracked up. Teddy stared at us with a slight frown, as if wondering what had gotten us laughing. That was another thing about the cat. He was always coming out with weird stuff like, The pile of shit has 1,000 eyes, and you can never be sure if he meant it to be funny or if it just happened that way. He'd look at people who were laughing with a slight frown on his face, as if to say, "Oh Lord, what is it this time?" Teddy had a natural 30, Jack, Queen, and King of clubs. Chris had only 16 and went down to his ride. Teddy was shuffling the cards in his clumsy way, and I was just getting to the gushy part of the murder story, where this deranged sailor from New Orleans was doing the Bristol stomp all over this college girl from Bryn Mawr, because he couldn't stand being enclosed in spaces. When we heard someone coming fast up the ladder nailed to the side of the elm. A fist rapped on the underside of the trap door. "Who goes?" Chris yelled. "Vern!" He sounded excited and out of breath. I went to the trap door and pulled up the bolt. The trap door banged up, and Vern Tessio, one of the other regulars, pulled himself into the clubhouse. He was sweating buckets, and his hair, which he'd always kept combed in a perfect imitation of his rock and roll idol, Bobby Riddell, was plastered to his bullet head in chunks and strings. "Wow, man," he panted. "Wait till you hear this." "Hear what?" I asked. "Let me get my breath. I ran all the way from my house." I ran all the way home, Teddy wavered in a dreadful little Anthony falsetto, "just to say I'm sorry." "Fuck your hand, man," Vern said. "Drop dead in the shed, Fred." Teddy returned smartly. "You ran all the way from your place?" Chris asked unbelievingly. "Man, you're crazy. Vern's house was 2 miles down Grant Street. It must be 90 out there." "This is worth it," Vern said. "Holy Jesus, you won't believe this. Sincerely." He slapped his sweaty forehead to show us how sincere he was. "Okay, what?" Chris asked. "Can you guys camp out tonight?" Vern was looking at us earnestly, excitedly. His eyes looked like raisins pushed into dark circles of sweat. "I mean, if you tell your folks we're going to tent out in my back field."
So you're taking a few
Give me
days.
one sec, guys. I love that face. Oh, that was amazing. That face of, oh my God. Okay. All right. "Yeah, I guess so," Chris said, picking up his new hand and looking at it. "But my dad's on a mean streak. Drinking, you know." "You got to, man," Vern said. "Sincerely, you won't believe this." "Can you, Gordy?" "Probably."
If any of the boys touch my food,
"They die."
Yeah.
I was able to do most stuff like that. In fact, I'd been like the invisible boy that whole summer. In April, my older brother Dennis had been killed in a Jeep accident. That was at Fort Benning, Georgia, where he was in basic. He and another guy were on their way to the PX, and an army truck hit them broadside. Dennis was killed instantly, and his passenger had been in a coma ever since. Dennis would have been 22 later that week. I'd always picked out a birthday card for him at Dolly's over in Castle Green. I cried when I heard, and I cried more at the funeral, and I couldn't believe that Dennis was gone. That anybody that used to knuckle my head or scare me with a rubber spider until I cried, or give me a kiss when I fell down and scraped both knees bloody and whispered in my ear, "Now stop crying, you baby." That a person who had touched me could be dead. It hurt me and it scared me that he could be dead. But it seemed that I had taken all the heart out of my parents. It seemed to take all the heart out of my parents. For me, Dennis was hardly more than an acquaintance. He was 10 years older than me, if you can dig it, and he had his own friends and classmates. We ate at the same table for a lot of years, and sometimes he was my friend and sometimes my tormentor. But mostly he was, just a guy. When he died, he'd been gone for a year except a couple of furloughs. We didn't even look alike. It took me a long time after that summer to realize that most of the tears I'd cried were for my mom and dad. Fat lot of good it did them, or me. Talking about cats.
Just let me in, I'll smooth that.
So what are you pissing and moaning about, Verno? Teddy asked. I knocked, Chris said. What? Teddy screamed, immediately forgetting all about Vern. You freaking liar, you ain't got no pat hand. I didn't deal you no pat hand. Chris smirked. Make you draw, shit heap. Make your draw. Teddy reached for the top card of the pile of bikes. Chris reached for the Winstons on the ledge behind him. I bent over to pick up the detective magazine. Vern Tessio said, you guys want to see a dead body? Everybody stopped. Now this is confusing. How is he seeing his first dead body when his brother died? And he was at the funeral. That's what I'm confused about. Unless he means dead body outside of a funeral home. We'd all heard about it on the radio, of course. The Philco had a cracked case, which had always been scavenged from the dump, played all the time. We kept it tuned to WLAM in Lewiston, which churned out the super hits and the boss oldies. What in the World's Come Over You by Jack Scott, and This Time by Troy Shindell, and King Creole by Elvis, and Only the Lonely by Roy Orbison. That's a good song. When the news came on, we usually switched to mental dial over to mute. The news has a lot of happy horse shit about Kennedy and Nixon and Quemoy and Matsu and the Missile Gap and what a shit that Castro was turning out to be after all. But we had all listened to the Ray Brower story a little more closely because he was a kid our age. He was from Chamberlain, a town 40 miles or so east of Castle Rock.
I'm telling you right now, everything's hard now. I should go do something.
Mm-hmm. 3 days before Vern came busting into the clubhouse after a 2-mile run from Grand Street, Ray Brower had gone out with one of his mother's pots to pick blueberries. When dark came and he still wasn't back, the Browers called the county sheriff and a search started. First, just around the kid's house, and then spreading to the surrounding towns of Moughton and Durham and Pownell. Yeah, there's Moughton again. Everybody got into the act. Cops, deputies, game wardens, volunteers. 3 days later, the kid was still missing. You could tell, hearing about it on the radio, that they were never going to find that poor sucker alive. Eventually, the search would just jeer away into nothing. He might have gotten smothered in a gravel pit slide or drowned in a brook, and 10 years from now, some hunter would find his bones. They were already dragging the ponds of Chamberlain and the Moughton Reservoir. Nothing like that could happen in southwestern Maine today. Most of the area has become suburbanized, and the bedroom communities surrounding Portland and Lewiston have spread out like the tentacles of a giant squid. The woods are still there, but they get heavier as you work your way west toward the White Mountains. But these days, If you can keep your head long enough to walk 5 miles in one consistent direction, you're certain to cross 2-lane blacktop. But in 1960, the whole area between Chamberlain and Castle Rock was undeveloped, and there were places that hadn't even been logged since before World War II. In those days, it was still possible to walk into the woods and lose your direction there and die there. Vern Tessio had been under his porch that morning, digging. We all understood that right away. But maybe I should take just a minute to explain it to you. Teddy DeChamp was only about half bright, but Vern Tessio would never be spending any of his spare time on College Bowl either. Still, his brother Billy was even dumber, as you will see. But first, I have to tell you why Vern was digging under the porch. 4 years ago, when he was 8, Vern buried a quart jar of pennies under the long Tessio front porch. Vern called the dark space under the porch his cave. He was playing a pirate sort of game, and pennies were buried treasure. Only if you were playing pirate with Vern, you couldn't call it buried treasure. You had to call it booty. So we buried the jar of pennies deep, filled in the hole, and covered the fresh dirt with some of the old leaves that had drifted under there over the years. He drew a treasure map, which he put up in his room with the rest of his junk. He'd forgotten all about it for a month or so. Then, being low on cash for a movie or something, he remembered the pennies and went to get his map. But his mom had been in to clean 2 or 3 times since then, and had collected all the old homework papers and candy wrappers and comic magazines and joke books. She she burned them in the stove to start the cook fire one morning, and Vern's treasure map went right up in the kitchen chimney. Or so he figured it. He tried to find the spot from memory and dug there. No luck. To the right and to the left of that spot, still no luck. He gave up for the day, but he tried off and on ever since. 4 years, man. 4 years. Isn't that a pisser? He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It had gotten to be sort of an obsession with him. The Tessio front porch ran the length of the house, probably 40 feet long and 7 feet wide. He had dug there damn near every inch of what area, too. Of that area, too, maybe 3 times and no pennies. The number of pennies began to grow in his mind. When it first happened, he told Chris and me that there had been maybe $3 worth. A year later, he was up to 5, and just lately it was running around 10, more or less, depending on how broke he was. Ever so often, we tried to tell him what was so clear to us, what Billy had known about the jar and dug it up himself. Vern refused to believe it. Although he hated Billy like the Arabs hate the Jews, and probably... Hey, what are you doing? Stop being a brat. And probably would have cheerfully voted the death penalty on his brother for shoplifting if the opportunity had ever presented itself. He refused to ask Billy point blank. Probably he was afraid Billy would laugh and say, "Course I got him, you stupid pussy, and there was $20 worth of pennies in that jar, and I spent every fucking cent of it." Instead, Vern went out and dug for the pennies whenever the spirit moved him, and whenever Billy wasn't around. He crawled out from under the porch with his jeans dirty and his hair leafy and his hands empty. We ragged him about it something wicked, and his name was Penny Tessio. I think he came to the club with his news as quick as he did not just get it out, but to show us that some good had finally come of his penny hunt. He had been up that morning before anybody, ate his cornflakes, and was out in the driveway shooting baskets through the old hoop nailed up on the garage. Nothing much to do. no one to play ghost with or anything, and he decided to have another dig for his pennies. He was under the porch when the screen door slammed up above. He froze, not making a sound. If it was his dad, he would crawl out. If it was Billy, he'd stay put until Billy and his JD friend, Charles Hogan, had taken off. 2 pair of footprints crossed the porch, and then Chris Hogan himself said in a trembling, crybaby voice, "Jesus Christ, Billy, what are we going to do?" Vern said that just hearing Chris Hogan talk like that, Charlie, who was one of the toughest kids in town, made him prick up his ears. Charlie, after all, hung out with Ace Merrill and Eyeball Chambers, and if you hung out with cats like that, you had to be tough. "Nothin'," Billy said. "That's all we're going to do. Nothing." "We've got to do something," Charlie said, and they sat down on the porch close to where Vern had hunkered down. "Didn't you see him?" Vern took a chance and crept a little closer to the steps, practically slavering. At that point, he thought that maybe Billy and Charlie had been really drunk up and had run somebody down. Vern was careful not to crackle any of the old leaves as he moved. If the 2 of them found out he was under the porch and had overheard them, you could have put what was left of him in a Kennel ration dog food can. "It's nothing to us," Billy Tessio said. "The kid's dead, so it's nothing to him either. Who gives a fuck if they ever find him? I don't." "It was that kid they've been talking about on the radio," Charlie said. "It was, sure as shit. Broker, Brower, Flowers, whatever his name is. Fucking train must have hit him." "Yeah," Billy said. Sound of the scratched match. Burns saw it flicker into the gravel driveway and then smelled cigarette smoke. "I sure did, and you puked." No words, but Vern sensed emotional waves of shame radiating off Charlie Hogan. "Well, the girls didn't see it," Billy said after a while. "Lucky break." From the sound, he clapped Charlie on the back to buck him up. "They'd blab it from here to Portland. We tore out of there fast, though." "You think they knew there was something wrong?" "No," Charlie said.
I almost didn't read it.
I don't know why.
I just want to talk to you about what.
Okay. All right. "No," Charlie said. "Marie don't like to go down that back Harlow Road past the cemetery anyway. She's afraid of ghosts." Then again, in that scared, crybaby voice, "Jesus, I wish we'd never boosted no car last night. Just gone to the show like we was gonna." Charlie and Billy went with a couple of skags named Marie Dougherty and Beverly Thomas. You never saw such gross-looking broads outside of a carnival show. Pimples, mustaches, the whole works. Sometimes the 4 of them, or maybe 6 or 8 if Fuzzy Brockowitz and Ace Merrill were along with their girls, would boost a car from the Lewiston parking lot and go joyriding out into the country with 2 or 3 bottles of wild Irish rose wine and a 6-pack of ginger ale. They'd take the girls parking somewhere in Castle View or Harlow or Shiloh, drink Purple Jesuses, and make out. Then they'd dump the car somewhere near home. Cheap thrills in the monkey house, as Chris sometimes said. They'd never been caught at it, but Vern kept hoping. He really dug the idea of visiting Billy on Sundays at the reformatory. If we told the cops, they'd want to know how we got how we got way the hell out in Harlow. Billy said, "We ain't got no car, neither of us. But it's better if we just keep our mouths shut. Then they can't touch us." "We could make an anonymous call," Charlie said. "They trace those fucking calls," Billy said ominously. "I've seen it on Highway Patrol and Dragnet." You're right," Charlie said miserably. "Jesus, I wish Ace had been with us. He could have told the cops we was in his car. Well, he wasn't. Yeah, Charlie said. He sighed. I guess you're right. I don't know why I got a cough now. A cigarette butt flicked into the driveway. We had to walk up and take a piss by the tracks, didn't we? Couldn't walk the other way, could we? And I got puke on my new PF flyers. His voice sank a little. Fucking kid was laid right out, you know it. Did you see that son of a whore, Billy? I seen him, Billy said. And a second cigarette butt joined the first in the driveway. Let's see if Face is up. I want some juice. We gonna tell him? Charlie, we ain't gonna tell nobody. Nobody never. You dig me? I dig you, Charlie said. Christ Jesus, I wish we never boosted that fucking Dodge. Aw, shut the fuck up and come on. Excuse me. I don't know why I got a cough. Excuse me. 2 pairs of legs, clawed and taut, wash-faded peg jeans. 2 pairs of feet, in black engineer boots with side buckles, came down the steps. Vern froze on his hands and knees. My balls crawled up so high I thought they was trying to get back home, he told us. Sure, his brother would sense him beneath the porch and drag him out and kill him. He and Charlie Hogan would kick the few brains the good Lord had seen fit to give him right out of his jug ears and then stomp him with their engineer boots. But they just kept going, and when Vern was sure they were really gone, he had crawled out from under the porch and ran here. We are not going to read the whole thing, obviously, but we're going to read quite a bit. You're really lucky, I said. They would have killed you. Teddy said, I know the back Harlow Road. It comes to a dead end by the river. We used to fish for cossies out there. Chris nodded. There used to be a bridge, but there was a flood a long time ago. Now there's just the train tracks. Could a kid really have gotten all the way from Chamberlain to Harlow? I asked Chris. That's 20 or 30 miles. I think so. He probably happened on the tracks and followed them the whole way. Maybe he thought they'd take him out, or maybe he thought he could flag down a train if he had to. But that's just a freight run now. GS and WM. Up to Derry and Brownsville. There's Derry again. And not many of those anymore. He'd had to have walked all the way to Castle Rock to get out. After dark, a train must have finally come along, and El Smacko. Chris drove his right fist down against his left palm, making a flat noise. Teddy, a veteran of many close calls dodging the pulp trucks on 196, looked vaguely pleased. I felt a little sick, imagining that kid so far away from home, scared to death but dodgily following the GS and WM tracks, probably walking on the ties because of the night noises from the overhanging trees and bushes. Maybe even from the culverts underneath the railroad bed. And here comes the train. And maybe the big headlight on the front hypnotized him until it was just too late to jump. Or maybe he was just laying there on the tracks in a hunger faint when the train came along. Either way, anyway, Chris had the straight of it. El Smacko had been the final result. The kid was dead. So anyway, you want to go see it? Vern asked. He was squirming around like he had to go to the bathroom. He was so excited. We all looked at him for a long second, no one saying anything. Then Chris tossed his cards down and said, Sure, and I'll bet you anything we get our pictures in the paper. Huh? Vern said. Yeah, Teddy said, and grinned his crazy truck-dodging grin. Look, Chris said, leaning across the ratty card table. We can find the body and report it. We'll be on the news. I don't know, Vern said, obviously taken aback. Billy will know where I found out. He'd beat the living shit out of me. No, he won't, I said, because it'll be us guys that find that kid, not Billy and Charlie Hogan in a boosted car. Then they won't have to worry about it anymore. They'll probably pin a medal on you, Penny. Yeah? Vern grinned, showing his bad teeth. It was a dazed sort of grin, as if the thought of Billy being pleased with anything he did had acted him like a hard shot to the chin. Yeah, you think so? Teddy was grinning too. Then he frowned and said, Oh, oh. What? Vern asked. He was squirming again, afraid that some really basic objection to the idea had just cropped up in Teddy's mind, or passed for Teddy's mind. Our folks, Teddy said. If we find that kid's body over in South Harlow tomorrow, they're going to know we didn't spend the night camping and out in Vern's back field. Yeah, Chris said. They'll know we went looking for that kid. No, they won't, I said. I felt funny, both excited and scared, because I knew we could do it and get away with it. The mixture of emotions made me feel heat sick and headachy. I picked up the bikes. I had something to do with my picked up the bikes to have something to do with my hands and started box shuffling them. That and how to play cribbage was about all I got from for older brother stuff from Dennis. The other kids envied that shuffle, and I guess anybody I know had asked me to show them how it went. Everyone except Chris. I guess only Chris knew that showing someone would be like giving away a piece of Dennis. Or I just didn't have so much of him, and I just didn't have so much of him that I could afford to pass pieces around. I said, we'll just tell him we got bored tenting in Vern's field because we'd done it so many times before, so we decided to hike up the tracks and have a camp out in the woods. I bet we don't even get hided for it because everybody will be so excited about what we found. My dad'll hide me anyway, Chris said. He's in a really mean streak this time. He shook his head sullenly. To hell, it's worth a hiding. Okay, Teddy said, getting up. He was still grinning like crazy, ready to break into his high-pitched, cackling laugh at any second. Let's all get together at Vern's house after lunch. What can we tell him about supper? Chris said. You and me and Gordy can say we're eating at Vern's. And I'll tell my mom I'm eating over at Chris's, Vern said. That took work unless there was some emergency we couldn't control, that would work unless there was some emergency we couldn't control, or unless any of the parents got together. And neither Vern's folks or Chris's had a phone. Back then, there was a lot of families which still considered a telephone a luxury, especially families of the shirt-tail variety. And none of us came from the upper crust. My dad was retired. Vern's dad worked in the mill and was still driving a 1952 DeSoto. Teddy's mom had a house on Danbury Street, and she took in a boarder whenever she could get one. She didn't have one that summer. The furnished room to let sign had been up in the parlor window since June, and Chris's dad was always on a mean streak, more or less. He was a drunk who got welfare off and on, mostly on, and spent most of his time hanging out in Suki's tavern with Junior Merrill, Ace Merrill's old man, and a couple of old rumpets, a couple of other local rumpets. Chris didn't talk much about his dad, but we all knew he hated him like poison. Chris was marked up every 2 weeks or so, bruises on his cheek and neck, or one eye swollen up and as colorful as sunset. And once he came into school with a big clumsy bandage on the back of his head. Other times, he never got to school at all. His mom would call him in sick because he was too lamed up to come in. Too lamed up to come in. Chris was smart, really smart, but he played truant a lot. And Mr. Halliburton, the town truant officer, was always showing up at Chris's house, driving his old black Chevy with the no rider sticker in the corner of the windshield. Chris was being truant, and Bertie, as we called him, always behind his back, of course, caught him. He would haul him back to school and see that Chris got detention for a week. But if Bertie found out that Chris was home because his father had beaten the shit out of him, Bertie just went away. Didn't say boo to the cuckoo bird. It never occurred to me to question this set of priorities until about 20 years later. The year before, Chris had been suspended from school for 3 days. A bunch of milk money disappeared when it was Chris's turn to be room monitor and collected. And because he was a Chambers from those no account Chamberses, he had to take the hike even though he always swore he never hawked the money. That was the time Mr. Chambers put Chris in the hospital for an overnight stay. When his dad heard Chris was suspended, he broke Chris's nose and his right wrist. Chris came from a bad family, all right. And everybody thought he would turn out bad, including Chris. His brothers had lived up to the town's expectations admirably. Frank, the oldest, ran away from home when he was 17, joined the Navy, ended up doing a long stretch in Portsmouth for rape and criminal assault. The next eldest, Richard, I got an itchy nose, his right eye was all funny and jittery, which was why everybody called him Eyeball, had dropped out of school in the 10th grade and chummed around with Charlie and Billy Tessio and their JD buddies. I think all that'll work, I told Chris. What about John and Marty? John and Marty Despain were two other members of the regular gang. They're still away, Chris said. They won't be back until Monday. Oh, well, that's too bad. So, are we set? Vern asked, still squirming. He didn't want a conversation sidetracked even for a minute. I guess we are, Chris said. Who wants to play some more scat? No one did. We were too excited to play cards. We climbed down from the treehouse, climbed the fence into the vacant lot, and played 3 flies, 6 grounders for a while with Vern's old friction-taped baseball. But that was no fun either. All we could think about was that kid Brower hit by a train and how we were going to see him, or what was left of him. Around 10 o'clock, we all drifted away home to fix it with our parents. All right, so we're going to stop there for tonight. We will start up. We read like 5 little sections. I know where I'm at in that book. And we will start again tomorrow. This shouldn't take us too long. It's only like 150 pages or something. No? Yeah. About 150 pages. So we're going to stop there tonight. I don't want to get into them going into looking for the body. I want to leave it a little bit suspenseful. So I was going to take a couple days off. I took yesterday, and I actually read on Kick. I wanted to read so badly, and I read Jerusalem's Lot. And then today I read on Kick. This afternoon I read Graveyard Shift and Night Surf. And like I said, Night Surf actually had a connection to The Stand, which is really awesome. Really, really awesome. So I think if you guys want, I can read that. But yeah, it took me a couple hours to read Jerusalem's Lot, which was surprising. And between Graveyard Shift and Night Surf, it only took me a little over an hour, like an hour and 20 minutes or so. So that sounds good. But yeah, I think we'll be okay. We'll start up again tomorrow morning. It should be okay. Well, maybe tomorrow's a Saturday. Depending, I may end up sleeping in depending on how sore I am because it's raining. So, we'll try for like 11 o'clock. And if I'm not on at 11, don't shoot me. Don't shoot the messenger. But I will be on sometime tomorrow. And we will read for more than an hour tomorrow. tonight it's just, for me, it's getting late and I'm sore, so I want to stop where I'm at and just get us started on another book. So I actually made some like thumbnails for each of my books, and it's the books, and then I just have my reading and what the book is and a little picture to go with it. So I will do the same thing here for different seasons, the body. So I think that'll be fun. So I think I'm just gonna put railroad tracks in it and a train. Oh, that'd be mean. I don't want to put a dead body. That's a little much. But yeah, I think that'll be good. I'll put my disclaimer on this video and I'll keep it up for you guys. So, and we'll continue. We'll probably be done in a couple days with it, but I want to keep a little bit of suspense and I don't want to get started on the actual sleepover yet. So we'll wait until tomorrow. So I think that'll be fun. I hope you guys. I love that. That is so awesome. That is so sweet. I love those little emojis. Those are awesome. I don't know if there's anything that I can put up that's so nice. I don't know. I've never looked at these emojis before, so I'll have to look and see if there's something that I want to put up here. Let me see if I can find something. Nope. Nope. Oh, no wonder I'm in the wrong one. Let's see. Nope. Oh, no wonder I'm in the wrong one. Let's see. I don't know. I'm looking at emojis, but I'm not seeing anything that I can put up here, so I'll have to look. There's some little doggies, I guess. There's some little hearts. It's kind of neat. Foot gold. Glitch cat. No way. Okay, I gotta see what this glitch cat is. This is a little cat with sunglasses. That is too cool. I like those emojis. That's actually kind of neat. What are these? Symbol heart. The Jaylee what? Shampoo wave. Nice. Very nice. So I will have to get me some emojis. I don't have any. Just the ones that are there. But it's fun that you guys... Oh, here's another one. This is a smiley one, I guess. Let me see if I can put it on here. A smiley. Hi! I hope you got the book. We are starting the body. I don't know if you saw it or not. We read like the first 6 sections, and it was pretty long. Hi, how are you? We started up. The body was made into a movie called Stand By Me. Not a whole lot of people know that. Some people do. I watched it before a couple times, and it's actually a really good one. And they're up to where they're talking about a sleepover. So that's where we stopped. I don't want to get into the sleepover yet. Hi. 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 Oh, don't hurt your nose. I got to get some things to put here so that you're not hitting your face on it. What? Give me 5. No? You're going to walk away? You're going to walk away? What are you doing? Goofball. Oh, now you're going to come say hi. Well then. Apparently I have to say hi to the doggies. You've got a hot spot, little girl. You guys got to go outside, is that what you're saying? Thought you were just outside. I just chased you outside an hour ago. Good gracious me. Apparently I have to go and let my doggies out because, an hour ago was just too long away. What? Ugh. What? Okay. Oh, and I got the bill for my car. Yeah, I'm not happy. I'm not happy at all. It's a lot. So I got to figure that out. It's just not going to get inspected. No. So anyway, oh, now you find a unicorn. That is just mean. It looks like a duck, but it looks like a unicorn. It does. Yeah. Wow. That is pretty cool. It is a unicorn. Leza 27 Ducky. It's a unicorn. That is awesome. Are you really in a hurry, Missy? You are.
I talked about on the phone.
Wait, they made him dress like a banana?
Mm.
The heck is that supposed to mean?
You'll have to watch the episode to find out.
I guess. Twitchy. I'm looking at all these. These are really cool. You want to see something really neat? Come here, check this out. Asexual pride flag. They got all these pride flags. Intersex pride. What does an intersex mean?
Hmm?
What does intersex mean?
You're born.
Both?
Yeah, either
Oh, okay.
genitalia or chromosomes or both.
Okay, that makes sense.
You're basically born with both characteristics of it.
Mm-hmm.
Chromosomes, physical, internal.
I just wasn't sure what that meant. So figure that
It
out.
used to be called Hermaphrodites after the goddess.
Right.
Well, after the god slash goddess Hermaphrodite.
Is that a ninja cat? M-cat. Rack attack. Oh, here we go. Trash panda. I found a trash panda. I don't know why they call it a trash panda. Because maybe it plays in trash, but there you go. Trash panda. But yes, I need to go. I have a little one waiting. Not so little. Anyway, I have a conversation to have. Actually, I have to listen, and you need to talk. And I got doggies that need to go out. So I'm gonna let y'all go. I love y'all. Thank you for sticking with me. Thank you for listening tonight. We will read tomorrow morning or tomorrow early afternoon when I get up and get settled. So we will do some more of the body, and we will see each other soon. So y'all have a good night and have a good Friday evening, unless you're into Saturday. Either way, y'all, thank you for hanging out. Love y'all. Bye.